ARE Podcast, episode number 46.
Welcome to the ARE Podcast. ARE Podcast, where it's all about encouraging and inspiring you today so you can fulfill your dream of becoming a licensed architect tomorrow. And now your host, David Doucette.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the ARE Podcast. I'm joined by my co-host, Eric Corey Freed. Eric, how are you?
I'm well. Hi, everybody.
You've been on a podcasting binge lately, it sounds like, actually, serving as a bunch of guest podcast, not host, a guest.
Yeah, I think I've been on 15 podcasts in the last 2 months.
Wow. And what's our topic today?
Today is a mixed bag, right? It's really talking about home testing. So I think what we're calling it is 5 reasons you should do at-home testing and maybe 5 reasons you shouldn't.
Which I think is a great topic. It's topical, right? And before we start, we'll start with the 5 reasons you should do it. Before we start, when it came out, when they announced that the at-home testing, I was thrilled, and I thought it was going to increase a whole bunch of people taking the exams. I thought it was going to create more architects in the process, and it hasn't really done that. And after talking to several candidates who have had experiences with it, it's definitely a flawed process. It's not for everyone. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's start off with the 5 reasons you should do it. And number 1, Eric, is the new cut. Let me try that again. The new cut scores and pass rates are the same. So what does that mean?
It's the same exact test, and there hasn't been any discernible evidence that shows that people do better in the testing center or better at home. Basically, the pass rates are the same whether they're at home or in the testing center. That's the good news, right? It's virtually the same, so it doesn't give you any sort of disadvantage to take it at home.
So whether I'm sitting in a seat in my house or a conference room, maybe at the office, or I'm sitting at the seat at the testing center, those are essentially the same. One of them doesn't have an advantage over the other as far as, scoring goes.
No. And what's interesting about that is that the way NCARB has set it up is you can ultimately, if you have an in-testing center appointment, you could switch it to at home and vice versa. It seems they're very flexible and generous with that. And so I think it's a good thing that the scores are generally the same and the pass rates are generally the same. Otherwise, if there was a clear advantage of one over the other, I think you'd see the candidates all flocking towards it.
Okay. Reason number 2 why we should consider taking an at-home exam is the interface is the same. And of course, that always brings up the question of the whiteboard. But what does that mean, the interface is the same? If they have different computers at the testing center and I'm taking it at home, how is the interface the same? Can you explain that to me?
It's the same web-based tool using the using the same exact tool. It looks exactly the same. It theoretically functions exactly the same. It is the same. They don't have an at-home version and then a testing center version. They're using, according to NCARB, they're using the same bits of code.
And as we often tell candidates, especially when they're doing the case studies, is that the system is designed so it's not living at a testing center's computer, right? They're always dialing into the NCARB servers, and that becomes not necessarily an issue, but if you're requesting a lot of information such as the case study drawings and clicking back and forth, it's dialing out to the NCARB servers every time we do that, right? And same thing at home, but just to the point of this test doesn't live in a testing center. It's all in the NCARB servers, and whether we're accessing it at a testing center or we're accessing at home, it's the same experience.
Exactly right. So you shouldn't, in theory, see any difference in the actual, experience in your sight line there between one test or the other, in theory.
And tell me a little bit about the whiteboard. I know it's probably been beat to death on the forums and all around, but since we're talking about it, we might as well talk about the whiteboard and how they've leveled the playing field using that tool.
Well, this is probably the more controversial aspect of the test itself, is that you are no longer allowed to have physical scratch paper in the testing center because the people at home are not allowed to have physical scratch paper. So NCARB's way of solving that dilemma was to force everyone to use this new online digital whiteboard tool that they created. And it's probably the most controversial thing that the candidates are upset about and have been for the last 6 months since it's come out. But again, if you're taking it at home, you're getting the exact same experience they're getting in the testing center. And I think that's by design, right? They didn't want people to feel that having physical scratch paper was somehow an advantage, and they didn't want anybody to feel like they were missing out by taking it at home. So they just made the experience the same. They went to great lengths to make the experience the same. And in doing so, I think upset a lot of people, but it's just a whiteboard. That's it. It's a whiteboard. It does mostly what it's supposed to do. And ideally, the whiteboard should make or break whether you pass or fail. And it's going to be the same whether you take it at home or in the testing center.
And NCARB, obviously, if we're taking it at home, they can't allow us to have scratch paper, right? Because we could be, writing anything on it. So, and they have to administer the same test, whether it's at home or in the testing center, so that it's, it's fair, right? So I get the whiteboard. I'm actually, I get it. I get what they're trying to do. And one thing we always tell our coaching candidates is, just as you're practicing for these exams, just try relying on the whiteboard a little less. It's a little clunky. It's not perfect. Whereas, sometimes if we have real scratch paper, we might write some notes that normally we wouldn't write, that we don't maybe even need to write, so just being a little more mindful of that. All right, number 3 reason of why we should consider at-home testing is if we have a long drive to a testing center. Explain that one, Eric.
Well, in the coaching program, we have a lot of candidates that live not in New York City or Los Angeles. They live in everywhere else. And for some of them, they have a long trek to a testing center. One of the examples I'm thinking of is one of our candidates who lives in Wyoming, and she essentially has to drive to Salt Lake City in order to take the test. And it becomes a whole thing. In fact, it's so complicated that she drives in the day before, stays over in a hotel, and then takes the test in the morning and then drives back. Well, think about that. That is now an added level of stresses of, I have to get there, I have to make this drive, I have to hope that I have enough gas and my car makes it, then I have to find a hotel, and then the expense of the hotel, the expense of the time off, and then getting up, and then knowing that on the drive home, you're facing another multi-hour drive home. All of that really adds to stress that if you can avoid, why not take it at home and save yourself all of that cost and aggravation.
And we have another gentleman in our platinum coaching who is up in Canada, and I don't exactly know. I think he's literally in a cabin in the woods somewhere, because he said he's like 3 hours from the nearest testing center in Canada, and he loves the at-home testings. He's had good luck with it. He hasn't had any sort of major glitches, and he really likes it. So it does work, right? Okay, number 4 of why we should consider the at-home testing is COVID safe. What is that?
Well, obviously, if you're at all concerned about the pandemic and COVID and catching it, the safest thing for you to do is take it at home, not leave your house, and no fear of exposure. That being said, taking it to the testing center is an incredibly safe experience. Not only are they wiping down everything all the time, but their ventilation systems are on high. They're changing out their filters. They have a whole series of COVID safe protocols that Prometric has rolled out to all their testing centers. There have been no reported cases to date of anybody catching COVID while taking the ARE. and so it's a pretty safe environment. But you're in a testing center. There are other people around you. Every time somebody coughs, you might be thinking, "Uh-oh, I'm going to get a rather deadly infection." And that's another layer of stress that if you can avoid it by taking it home, why not? Plus, you won't have to wear a mask for 5 hours. That's another kind of nice benefit.
And number 5, you're out of excuses. What's that one about?
So when the COVID pandemic happened in March 2020, a lot of candidates said to me, "Well, I'll just put this on hold." Well, they were looking for a reason to put their testing on hold. They weren't enjoying their testing. They were scared. They wanted a reason to put it on hold. And here comes along this tailor-made excuse of, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't take it." Well, the testing centers were only closed for about a month and a half. and yet we still have people now a year and a half later coming back and saying, "So I'm thinking about getting back into testing. I put it on hold during COVID and I'm ready to get back into testing." It's like, no, you're not. You took a year and a half off because you wanted to. You used this as an excuse. The testing centers were only closed for really, I think, March and April, and come May 1st, they were open again. So you could have been testing this whole time. In fact, you could have been done all 6 of your exams by now. And so what I love about the at-home testing is, hey, buddy, you don't have any more excuses, right? You could take it at home. You could take it anytime. You could take it in the middle of the night, even if you wanted to. There's no excuse you can come up with of why you're not taking your test. So just do it. I don't want to hear how life gets in the way. I don't want to hear how you're busy at work and all these deadlines. And now I certainly don't want to hear, well, COVID, because you can take it at home and order pizza afterwards and never miss a beat. So just do it.
Yeah, when COVID started, right, March 2020, testing centers were closed for a little bit. I think, May 2020, they opened selective locations. Our coaching program was running the whole time. We had candidates still adhering to the study plan, changing it a little bit till they could get an exam date, but they've been moving right along, right? And this was over a year ago. So
yeah, I always felt like I knew the ones that were going to get done quickly were the ones that when March 2020 hit, they're like, this is great. I don't have to commute to work anymore. I have all this extra time. I'm working from home. I can use that to study. It became, for them, it didn't become an opportunity not to take the test. That for a lot of people that we saw in our coaching program, it became the perfect excuse to take the test. And the challenge for them was that they no longer had a 3-hour commute to work every day and back, and they couldn't listen to the audio. That's what they were complaining about.
Right. Right, because they didn't have their commute to listen to the audio, so they had to sit around home listening to the audio. But it is funny. It's a matter of perception, and you're right. I mean, COVID is the perfect excuse to put the exams off and feel good about it, right? Oh, I can't, COVID, I can't, and we had a lot of people, and I imagine now, a year and a half into COVID, you probably still get a few of those web chats every week about, hey, I'm going to get into the exams now. Are they open? Are the testing centers open? People playing really dumb, like they've been on another planet.
Yes, it's a year and a half later, and I'm still getting to this day calls going, so are the testing? I heard a rumor that they're starting to launch this at home. I'm like, dude, it's been at home for months, since last November. Where are you? And to NCARB's credit, they have really rolled out a big promotional campaign around this. If you look at their YouTube channel, the number of YouTube videos they've released in the last 6 months have spiked because they want you to do this. They want you to know about it. They want you to get back on board. And because obviously, I think their testing numbers dropped a little bit in 2020. And so they want to get the word out that this is a thing and to get people to do it. So you really have no excuse.
Okay, so the 5 reasons you should consider at-home testing. Number 1, the cut scores and the pass rates are the same whether you take it at home or in the testing center. Number 2, the interface is exactly the same whiteboard, same protocols. Number 3, if you have a long drive to a testing center, then obviously taking it at home can save you a lot of time and stress. 4, COVID safe. Again, taking it at home can certainly save you stress, especially if you have anxiety about this whole thing. And then number 5, you're out excuses because now you can take it at home. That's a great list. And so let's jump into 5 reasons why you should not take the exam at home. And before we do that, I want to clarify too, because we teach our candidates this in coaching. When we're doing, this is a very fluid process. This entire journey is a fluid process. So we try things along the way, right? It's not like, sometimes I think if we make a decision, we feel like we're stuck with it. Like if I do at-home testing, in my mind, I feel like I have to do all 6 exams at home. I feel like that's what I'm committing to, but we don't. You could take at-home testing, try it. You didn't like it? Okay, go to the testing center. Do the testing center. Let me try at home. So it's a very fluid process, and we've had candidates do both in our coaching program, and we've had candidates like both. We've had definitely candidates who like the at-home. Other candidates definitely prefer going to a testing center, but those are usually ones where the testing center is very close, whether they're in New York, San Francisco, or wherever they are. And with that said, I don't know if we have a majority, at least kind of I'm thinking in a sampling of our coaching candidates of which one prefer, because again, some candidates are trying both just to see what they like. So, all right, 5 reasons why we should not. There are, number 1 in 5 glitches at home and long waits. What does that mean? Tell me about the glitch, Eric.
Well, the at-home testing rollout was not as smooth as I think we all would have hoped it would have been, right? When I heard that they announced at-home testing, my first thought was, oh my gosh, this is going to be great. It's going to get more people licensed. It'll really get them to stop making their excuses, and it'll be a good thing ultimately. But then in the back of my mind, I'm like, please, please, please let it go smoothly, because if it doesn't, people might, especially in this community where gossip spreads like wildfire, if it didn't go smoothly, it would turn people away from getting tested. And we're starting to see a lot of that, right? Well, on the phone calls that we do, I get people saying, well, I heard this about this. I heard this and I heard this. Here's the truth of it. Right now, 1 in 5 people that do at-home testing have some form of glitch. Whether that glitch is a fatal error or not and prevents them from finishing the test, those numbers are all on NCARB's website, and you can break it down further. But to me, 1 in 5 is a lot. That's 20%. I mean, it's just a massive number of people. To me, an acceptable glitch rate would be 1%, I think, and this is 20 times that. And so the odds are pretty good that if you do at-home testing, you'll experience some glitch. Now, a lot of people recover from these glitches. Sometimes the glitches are just that they had to wait, right, for a proctor to come on. That's probably the most common one, but it's still a glitch. And if you had planned your day and you wanted to take your test and then go do other things, you might be surprised that the testing might take longer than you anticipated.
And I'm surprised too, because we definitely have heard these glitch stories of candidates in our coaching program, and many of them have been delayed hours before, for whatever reason, before they could get on. With that said, a lot of the ones that had glitches continue to do at-home testing. Like, it didn't deter them. And oftentimes if they had a glitch where they couldn't finish the exam or they couldn't, start the exam, NCARB has been great about getting them rescheduled right away, like the next day or 2 days later or whatever it is. So NCARB is trying to do what they can, and it's just all part of the process. So if you're going to do at-home testing, just kind of expect a little bit of a ride. But again, the convenience of maybe not having to drive 3 hours to a testing center is huge. And I'm actually surprised of the glitches we've heard in our coaching. More candidates are saying, well, I'm never doing that again. Most who experience glitches hang in there, and they keep doing that at-home testing. So it's just setting your expectation, right? And the glitches can happen at the testing center too, but it seems to be your chances are greater at home, and it's just, the way it is. With that, it seems like in recent months, I'm hearing less glitchy stuff. It seemed like a lot of stuff was happening in the at the beginning of the rollout.
Yeah, obviously the overall trend is that it's improving and people are seeing less and less glitches. That being said, I'm still, every day we have people taking the test, and every day we hear something about at-home testing that's not the most positive.
Okay, number 2 reason why we should not consider taking it at home is the internet speed as a factor. What's that one mean?
Well, it turns out that internet speed does really affect your ability to take the test. So if you have kind of glitchy DSL at your house, or if it's known to go out or has a propensity for outages, you might want to think of another thing. One of the things that NCARB recommends is that you don't do it over Wi-Fi at all, but you connect to a hardline Ethernet cable. Well, this is not as easy as it may sound. For example, just in my house, I'm on the way other end of the house, and the router is at the other end, and I don't have an Ethernet cable long enough. And so I guess I could take it in my family room and do it there. But my family room is not the ideal situation for the test because there's pictures and books and things all over the walls that I'd have to remove. So, again, it's not as simple as it sounds to just run an Ethernet cable from your router. So you keep that in mind. One of the things that we've been telling people in the coaching program is a great hybrid approach, if you want to take it at home, is to take it at your office. Because you've got great Ethernet or great internet at your office. You could probably definitely get an Ethernet cable going at your office, and you could pick an empty conference room and easily meet the requirements that NCARB wants of just blank white walls everywhere. And if your office isn't fully returned post-pandemic, it might be the ideal place because you might be the only one there.
The conference room seems to be a popular spot for those considering at an office. In terms of the internet speed, that is an issue, and don't do it over Wi-Fi. But you can also get an Ethernet cable, get them on Amazon. I mean, you can get them as long as 300 feet. So kind of to Eric's point, saying it's at the other end of the house, you could just run the cable, right, just down the hallway, through the living room, through the kitchen, through a window if you had to, just for purposes of taking the exam, right? And then once the exam is over, unplug it. But obviously you don't want kids or anyone running around who's going to trip the cable and cut off your exam taking experience. But it's definitely a consideration for those of you who your main computer is not, hardwired in.
I feel like I'd have my daughter and her friends playing jump rope with it or something when
totally
I'm trying to take the test.
Totally. All right, number 3, and this is probably the biggest deterrent of should not. It's not a huge deterrent, but it's probably the bigger one on our list of 5 to overcome, is space prep. And we need a blank white space. And I know candidates often think that when they hear us say blank white space, they think we're exaggerating, because we kind of exaggerate things sometimes, but that's literally what they're looking for. So explain that, Eric.
Yes, apparently NCARB only wants you to take the test in a sensory deprivation chamber where there are no windows, there are no books, there's no pictures on the wall, there's nothing that could potentially, I guess, you could cheat from. That's really what they're after. And so what they make you do is they make you inspect your space. And I really encourage all of you taking it home to run through the concierge service that they have, where you can kind of show your webcam around. And they can tell you if it'll meet the requirements or not, and it'll save you time and stress during test day.
Hold on, let me just jump in for a second. That concierge service, NCARB actually provides that for you guys, and I just wanted to clarify that. It's not something Eric and I provide, so don't hit us up and say, hey, can you check my space out? I just wanted to clarify. It's NCARB, and they're great about this. You can schedule it through your dashboard, this special ahead of time, where they can preview your room, and they can tell you, yeah, you're good or not. Sorry, Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, please don't ask us to look at your space. But the feeling that you get, especially if you watch the free videos that NCARB puts out about this, they want you to take your bed sheets, they want you to hammer them over the windows and cover all your bookcases. Well, I don't know if I really want to put nail holes in all my sheets. I don't even know if I have enough sheets, to be honest with you, to do what they're talking about. So you might have to end up taking a trip to the dollar store and seeing if there's some cheap white sheets you can pick up just for this purpose. So there's a bit of prep involved. And so if you think that this is going to be like going to Jiffy Lube, where you can just show up and get it done, think again. Going to the testing center makes it a lot easier in that regard, and that you set your appointment and you be there, and you don't have to worry about anything. But the space prep to me is probably the most challenging, depending on how you live, especially if you live with roommates and with, a lot of clutter or any of that stuff. You'll have to clear all that out way before the test.
Number 4 reason why we may not want to consider at-home testing is if we have a close testing center nearby. Eric, what is that one about?
Well, if you live in a city, the chances are that you have at least 2 or 3 testing centers that are pretty close to you, and maybe even a network of more around you. And so do yourself a favor, go on to Yelp and look up the Prometric centers that are near you. And the reason why I think Yelp is a good place to do it is because you can read the reviews of what other people said about it, and not just people taking the AREs, but people taking the GMATs and the LSATs and all the other tests that are out there. You'll get their unabashed opinion about that particular testing center, and these will be very valuable things. Does it have good parking? Is the staff nice? Was it clean? Is it in a good location? Right? All these things that you can figure out just from the Yelp reviews. And if you have one close, why not go there? And keep in mind that if the one nearest you that's 4 blocks away has a bad review, maybe there's one that's 12 blocks away that doesn't, and it's worth the extra trip.
And number 5, our last of the reasons why you may not want to consider the at-home exam, is we need a webcam. And this has been a source of confusion for our coaching candidates as well. I see it posted on our Slack every so often. But yes, we need a webcam. But what's going on with all of this, Eric?
Well, I know you're thinking, well, every computer has a webcam. No, it doesn't. If you have an desktop computer, you might not have a webcam at all. You might only have one on your tablet or on your phone. And if you have a laptop, you definitely have a webcam, but it's not the webcam that they want. They want the ability for you to take the webcam off and hold it around the space and show them around the space. The laptop webcam can't do that. They don't want you doing that. I have heard people that have gotten away with it, but if you read, you really read the NCARB requirements to the letter, they want a detachable webcam that you can move around so they can look around the space. I think the thinking is that at any time during the test, the proctor should be able to come on and say, wait a minute, show me your feet. And you could take the webcam off and show them that you don't have cheat sheets on your feet or something. So, this external webcam has become a problem. To alleviate that, NCARB gave a $50 rebate for certain models webcam. So if they're still offering it, check it out. But that might be a good way for you to get a free webcam out of the deal and take the test at home.
And there are specific webcams. Check out their website that is sort of, I guess, on their approved list. I don't exactly know what you would call it, but just make sure whatever webcam you have, or if you're going to buy one, make sure it is one that is compatible with this exam. So the 5 reasons why you may not want to consider: number 1, glitches; number 2, the internet speed at home; number 3, the space prep and everything that's entailed with that; number 4, you have a testing center close by; and number 5, it requires a webcam. So those are 5 reasons should, 5 reasons should not. If it's something that I feel like was a waste of time doing at-home testing, I would tell you guys. I mean, I don't know if I would personally try it, because I like the idea of going somewhere, not in my home or my workspace. I like going somewhere to take the exam. But if I live not close to a testing center, then that's probably a different conversation. I have to think about that a little more. But I think it's worth trying. Why not? And you might like it and you might not, but you don't know until you try it. And this is, it's a fluid process. What do you think, Eric, personally? Would you do it?
I'd probably go to a testing center just because I live in a major city and there are a ton around me. Knowing that I'd have to wear a mask for 4 or 5 hours is annoying, but I've been doing that now lately when I've been getting on planes and stuff. So it's not the end of the world. I'd probably start studying with a mask on just to get used to it, but I'd probably go to the testing center. But at-home testing would be great. If I lived in a place that I had to drive more than an hour to get to a testing center, to me it would be a no-brainer. Let me try it at home. If it glitches, then I'll reschedule it. It's not the end of the world.
So after all of our lists, and I'm kind of just thinking out loud off the top of my head here, but it sounds like the biggest benefit of at-home testing is if we're just not close to a testing center. That sounds like the biggest benefit, right? Which a lot of us aren't, by the way.
Yeah, but I talk to a lot of candidates, and their range of anxieties is immense. And for some of them, it is COVID related. They're very fearful of getting sick. For others, it's timing, right? Some of the biggest proponents of taking it at home were the people that were in Dubai or Hong Kong for their office, and they have really limited options for a testing center. Now they can kind of take it at home from overseas and do it in the middle of the night if they want to, and the times are much more open to them. So to me, the glitches will work themselves out. Ultimately, it's the same experience. It's the same test. You can decide if you want to hear if you passed or not at the same way. It's all the same, and sometimes to a fault, but it's all the same experience at home or in the testing center. So why not try it? We've had a lot of people that tried it at home and loved it, and I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm going to do this all the time. Like they sound like they just discovered Grubhub or Uber Eats or something like that, and they're just, this is so easy, so great.
Yeah, I think the COVID protocols actually aren't to be underestimated too, because there are candidates that we have in our program that are in New York City and have a plethora of testing centers available to them, but they choose to take it at home, right? Because in New York City, you got the population, you have the subway, you're potentially coming into a contact with a lot of different people just to get to the testing center. So that is obviously a consideration too. It is, you cut that down to zero by taking it at home.
The weird part of all of this is I feel like, okay, if even if people had their study guides open, I don't see how that would really help you that much in a test, because the test is so much about judgment and time management that let them sneak into the bathroom and study. What's the big deal? But NCARB obviously has created this very ironclad approach to it, but it's good, right? It removes all sense of any sort of impropriety going on, so that's great.
It is good, and I agree. Maybe 4.0 is a little different, but with 5.0, it's not really a cheatable test because it's a judgment test. You either kind of know it or you know it enough to figure out some of those questions, but you're not going to be looking at a book in the moment to find an answer to one of the questions. It's just not how it works.
Exactly.
Alrighty, I think that's gonna wrap up our podcast here. On behalf of Eric, my name is David Doucette, and we will see you guys on our next ARE podcast.
Thanks for listening to the ARE podcast. Be sure to visit architectexamprep.com and check out our other podcast episodes, video tips, and the ARE blog. Remember to plan, practice, and pass.